Hey, you. Don't worry, I won't ask you to stop right there or forcefully ask you not to scroll. That seems to be a trend here, and I feel we are all entitled to free will. But I will say this, see for yourself. There are no hashtags, and I specifically ask Spirit to guide this message to those who were meant to hear it. And here you are. If you choose to stay, the choice is yours. However, there are no coincidences, and everything happens exactly the way it should. Do with that information as you may. For those of you who've chosen to stick around, let's get into it. This message from Spirit is titled, Your Tears Are Not a Sign of Weakness. I'm not sure about your generation, but I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I believe my generation, the millennials, experienced the best of both worlds. Don't come at me, I'm convinced I'm right. We are magnificently aware of how to utilize a library, study and open a book minus electronics, with the audacity to also be blessed to experience the technological breakthrough shortly after technological advances became the best thing since sliced bread. Translation, we learned the hard way, and we're also able to benefit from the perks of technology, which allowed us to build character at a very young age. We've experienced some of the best, if not the best, musicians from a plethora of genres, as well as the importance of quieting the entire household in order to play our favorite song while recording our voicemail. This was all done in a desperate attempt to sound sexy or attractive to future callers. Unfortunately, we also experienced the beginning of a massive breakdown in trauma stemming from previous generations. Our parents and their parents' parents and their parents' parents' parents raised us utilizing the thick lens of unhealed generational trauma. Now, before I begin, this post isn't meant to point fingers or place blame, but to make us all aware of the domino effect when it concerns our mental health and the true meaning of transgenerational trauma. Transgenerational trauma is the psychological traumatic effects experienced by a collective group of people within subsequent generations. How does this affect you? I'll explain. In my generation, as well as my community, we were taught at a very young age not to express ourselves openly and freely. That if there were problems within our home, this was not the community's business. If we were depressed, no one should know. Hence, teaching us early on to hide our true emotions, suffer in silence, not express ourselves openly, or suppress, repress, dodge, tuck away, and run away from the very thing that allows us to heal from the inside out. The healthy expression of our emotions. I'm sure you've met or have individuals in your family that are always angry, always pissed off at the world about something that didn't go their way. They lack patience, and the simplest things can set them off for what appears to be no reason. These are the people most of us tend to steer clear of, but they are also the people we need to spend more time with. Have you ever wondered or specifically asked them why they're so angry all the time? I'll do my best to answer on their behalf. 99.9% of these individuals have never felt safe to express their truest emotions. Many people mask their pain with anger because it's actually considered the preferable response in comparison to crying. One thing we must realize is that when we do not allow our mind and body to express our emotions in their truest form, we are programming our minds to believe that we do not truly accept who we are. Your body does not understand this is a protective mechanism. It is simply abiding by your rules. Hence, training your mind to believe anger is the only emotion you feel safe to express. Another not so great pattern my generation was taught was that showing their emotions was considered a sign of weakness. This may have rang true in our parents' childhood. The world was quite racist when they were being raised and still is. But I admit we have made some progress since then. Obviously, we have a long way to go, but I digress. Their childhood was consumed with the news reporting people of color being lynched and their bodies being dragged down dirt roads simply to instill fear. Needless to say, showing strength instead of emotions may have temporarily guaranteed their safety. Today, this perception could not be further from the truth. I'll explain why. But first, I'll give a personal example around the age of 4 or 5. My father almost died. He was a high voltage lineman and was diligently working on a power line in the rain to prevent an explosion from occurring. He was doing his normal routine checks when lightning struck the pole he was working on, lighting him on fire and tossing him into the air. After flying out of the work bucket, he fell into the back of his work vehicle. Had one of the neighbors not come to his rescue by tossing a heavy wet blanket onto him, he may have not survived. He experienced third-degree burns from his head all the way down to his legs. His treatment was quite painful, and I still remember how long he remained in the burn unit and how often our mother visited him. I vividly remember the day he was due to return home and the conversation my two eldest brothers and I had with our mother. I could sense her anxiety and panic as she told us our father would be arriving soon. The one thing she emphasized was that he was bandaged from head to toe and was extremely worried about us getting upset. He was in a significant amount of pain and was more concerned about our reaction to his appearance. She instructed us that no matter how we felt upon his arrival, not to cry or display emotions, that this would only hurt him more. She specifically looked in my direction several times as she spoke, being that I was a child who was highly in tune with my emotions. My brothers stood by stoically as if this was a simple request and nothing new to them. I later came to the realization it was not their first rodeo. I vaguely remember feeling the need to appease my mother's wishes. However, I also knew I was a daddy's girl, and seeing him in pain may be a bit overwhelming for me, so I attempted to brace myself for his arrival, hoping and praying I could maintain a facade and gain my mother's approval. Regrettably, I did not. Keep in mind, I was very young at the time. I knew nothing about what it meant to be psychic or a psychic empath or an intuitive. I just knew I could sense and pick up on others' emotions and feel their pain. I was always baffled at the thought others couldn't do the same. I was also coming to the realization that I knew things I shouldn't without knowing how I knew them. And then things would occur that would confirm my suspicions. Pretty scary for a 5-year-old, right? After receiving a bit of backlash for being too sensitive or knowing too much, I quickly learned that my differences were not considered normal or acceptable. That being said, I learned to mask my gifts. But back to the subject at hand, I failed tragically. I broke down and cried right in front of my father as he stood in front of me after entering our home. I knew this would disappoint my mother, but my father's pain consumed me. I felt and sensed the grief, regret, sadness, worry, pain. He was attempting to mask it all. It literally knocked the wind out of me. What made things worse was I wanted to run to him and hug him. However, I knew doing so would only cause more pain. So I allowed the tears to fall until I could gather the courage to look him in the eyes. As soon as I looked up, I sensed my mother's disdain for my outburst, and I immediately apologized. She couldn't have been more disappointed, and her aversion to my meltdown was clear and evident. This was the day I learned my emotions were not meant to be expressed, and that if I wanted to be accepted, they had no place showing up in my home. My brothers did not budge the entire time, and they just sat there and spoke quietly and greeted my father as if nothing happened. They were complete statues, and to this day, I still wonder how this simple act may have crushed their spirits, not feeling free to express their truest emotions when it concerned their father's pain. What my mother thought she was doing was protecting our father as well as us from experiencing sadness or grief. What she actually did and probably does not realize is she taught her children, to include a psychic empathic child, to shut off their emotions. She taught us that our emotions were not allowed to take up space, in the very space we were meant to feel safe to express them. I'm sure at the time she did not realize the severity of her actions, but her words followed me into my adulthood, causing me to reject the very person I was until one day the straw finally broke the camel's back. Have you ever wondered why people snap and shoot children in schools, movies, theaters, or churches? Why people open fire on crowds? Do you ever wonder why people's society deems normal walk into oncoming traffic or jump off of bridges to end their perceived perfect lives? The answer is quite simple. You never knew who they were in the first place. Now, I'm not making excuses for anyone. We've all experienced things we wish we wouldn't, and it is our responsibility to heal. However, at some point in their lives, these people were taught to mask their true feelings, that their truest, ugliest thoughts and emotions and behaviors were not acceptable. And so they continued to go through life ignoring their mental health, disregarding their depression, masking their anger, pain, rage, until that one day someone pushed them too far and pushed them over the edge. What I want you to know is that although I understand why certain traumas were passed down from generation to generation, this does not excuse the need to heal and release them so that future generations can thrive. We should not be living in survival mode. We own the right to live peacefully. It is our job to do the work so we can live healthier lives. I am doing my part and will continue to do so. If I sense your pain or depression, I will check on you. If I sense your anger and your anxiety, I will help you ground your energy. I will invite you to join my program so that I can assist you on your healing journey because I realize the importance of having a safe space to release your burdens. I will make space for you to show up authentically because there are too many of us drowning in private in order to maintain a facade for people who forget about us minutes after exchanging energy with us. And for those of you who are aware yet refuse to heal your inner childhood wounds, who continue to pass them on to your children while placing blame on others instead of accepting responsibility and taking the time to heal, who walk through life telling men to man up and they're not men because they cry. Those of you who are not strong enough to show up and show the world who you really are, so you bully those who are strong enough to be authentic, I want you to ask yourself why you don't feel safe to be you. Why are you unwilling to accept others as they are? Could it be that your ego is rejecting them being themselves because you were never given the time and space to show up authentically? Consider my words the next time you choose to target someone who isn't afraid to cry, because there are some of the strongest people in the world that I know that cry. And if you, for some reason, have allowed these people to get under your skin, it's time for you to look in the mirror. They face their demons and come out on the other side. Future generations will benefit from their healing journey. Maybe it's time you take a few lessons from them and heal so we can all learn to accept others as they are. Moral of the story? Allow people to be who they are and express themselves freely. Never apologize for crying or displaying emotions that make others feel uncomfortable. Your tears are not a sign of weakness. Allowing yourself to be open and vulnerable in front of others requires courage. Make space for people to tap into their emotions, their vulnerability, or to be intimate without judgment, and stop forcing others to be someone they are not because you've made the unfortunate decision not to heal your trauma. We are all walking from different races, religions, backgrounds, and preferences. These differences do not define who we are. They are simply making us beautifully unique. We need to start acting like it. Let's heal so future generations are able to show up authentically, allowing the world to be the place we've always dreamt it would be. A peaceful place to live a healthy life. I truly hope this message helps. If you'd like to hear more, please feel free to join my TikTok, my Queen Evolve Facebook group, subscribe to my blog, or my YouTube channel by clicking the link in my bio. Until next time, I wish you all the best. And I send you peace, blessings, love, and light.